Well, I'm going to start the recording. So one of the questions that came up was regarding this weekend's draft assignment that you're turning in. And so just so that you know, that particular assignment is supposed to be turned in as one document. And I think it sounded like Kat, you and Tony actually understood that based on what you said in your check-in before I started the video. So one document, I'm really just wanting this to be the draft of what eventually you're going to have as part of, your three-prong thing that you turn in that we're going to be able to give to Providence Park. So you can do it one of two ways, and I really don't care which way you do it. You could have it organized by person in your group, right? So all of Latara's sources are together, all of Kat's sources are together, all of Tony's sources are together. Or you could alphabetically do it. I'll do the actual like you would normally do in a APA style, right? Where you list the author of the whatever the source is, right? And you put them in alphabetical order. And then in parentheses afterwards, even though that's not APA style, you would just put the student name who's responsible for that one. And so I don't care which way it's done, but I want it all in one document, all formatted the same. And so only one person needs to actually submit that. And it's just, it's just a draft at this point. So when we go into the, let me just share my screen here. When we go into the Blackboard and under assignments, you've got in all this final project is where we're putting everything in terms of what you're turning in. So this says group resource guide draft for instructor feedback. You'll notice I had to put myself last week. I'm like, I don't see anything here. It's because I didn't have myself as part of one of the groups. So I finally, I fake April basically as part of one of the groups. So I finally figured out how to do that. And so you can notice here that you'll only see your group here, okay, on these. So you'll go into this group resource guide draft. One person is all we need to turn this in. It's not worth any points. It shows you the group members here, although I'm not here. I'm just not really a user. So we start attempt. Maybe. All right, I don't know what that's about. It is possible that it won't work on the preview side of things, but hypothetically, you're supposed to start the attempt when you go in there and then be able to put the Google Doc shareable link. Make sure that you have that link shareable where I can write comments on it, because that's what I will actually be looking at and giving you feedback on. So one per group. If for some reason you get to the place where you're seeing the same thing I was doing, which is that you go in there and start attempt is like not letting you do it. It may be that somebody else from your group actually has already submitted it. Or it may be that it's just not working right. So to cover that, if that's true, then what you would do is just turn around and send me an email to my work email and put the link in there. Okay. So if for some reason that there's something broken in the system, be able to turn that in, just send that to me in an email. Okay. So so that's for this weekend. I'm just wanting to make sure that you're on track, that you're doing the work that you need to be doing, that the groups are coming together. And that's what's due this weekend. The following weekend for instructor feedback, so the Sunday right before we go off for Thanksgiving, you will turn in probably, I'm guessing, a bullet point, not the full narrative of the systems and process guide draft. And so it doesn't have to be in its fully developed form, but I'm wanting to make sure that you are on the right track to be able to meet all the criteria for that particular assignment. For that particular assignment, just to remind you, I'll share my screen again. Everything now for all these assignments is in this final project overview and explanation sheet. So if you click on that, it goes through the whole thing that you're going to be doing. It talks about the systems and process guide. So that's these 4 parts is what you've got to be, doing. Talks about the group resource guide. The reason I've got these in, I know the opposite order of how you're actually working on them is because that's the order that they will appear in the whole thing together for Providence Park. You always want the executive summary at the front end, although that's what you end up writing last in terms of it's like writing an introduction to a paper. You shouldn't start with that until you get the whole paper done because you don't know for sure what you're going to say. So write the introduction or the executive summary last, and we'll talk about that tonight and what that looks like. You're starting on your group resource guide because you got to get the materials in order to be able to create the systems and process guide, but that needs to happen and be actually kind of as almost like an appendix to the systems and process guide, because that's where they can go to find out more information. So those are the 3 things that are all due on December the 5th, and we'll go over the executive summary tonight because we haven't covered that yet. And then the peer evaluation, I've talked a little bit about that. We'll talk a little bit about that after we get back after we get back from the holiday break, and then Thanksgiving break. And then tonight I'll also talk about the individual analysis paper. So all the dates are here. I have added some things at the very bottom based on a discussion that we had last week. So somebody asked about, wouldn't it be nice not have to create things totally from scratch? And so I actually went on and asked for some ChatGPT to help us with what are some of the kind of community rules that might be present in something like Providence Park. And it found some sources that it basically had. These were, to me, this is like property management almost stuff. And I think we were having trouble a little bit figuring out the kind of things that might come underneath that. The other thing is that I was able to get the neighbor support intake form, the property management intake form. Those are just 1-pagers. There is, if they have, this is mobile, MLF is Mobile Loaves and Fishes, which is Community First, used to be called Mobile Loaves and Fishes because they used to literally have a food truck that would go around and help the homeless or the unhoused population. So they still sometimes will call themselves that. I think it was their nonprofit originally, what the name of it was. And so these are all different incident reporting forms that were shared. I also had a good conversation with Mandy and Aaron this week. And so if you actually go to this Providence Park Partners doc here, so I'm anytime I get something new, this is where it goes. Okay. So I just want you to know that you can always go there. So this was actually a meeting, tells you what we talked about and addressed, and my notes from that meeting as well. One of the things that they are working on, they really don't have partners for the property management side. They don't have a third party who collects the rent yet. They are getting fair housing policies and best practices from the local real estate associations. And they've got the sheriff's office involved. And so at this point, those are the partners that are related to property management. Then the neighbor care partners, if you remember the interview that we did with the Community First Village folks, they said that they had neighbor care partners in 4 areas. They had a conflict resolution partner, they had a mental health partner, they had a substance abuse partner, and they had a financial literacy partner. And so they said they still do not have this partner. I said maybe they could set up a peer coaching system for some of their, and because I knew we were talking about that tonight, I'm like, well, maybe one of the things that you all could, for the neighbor care group, you might actually have as a systems process is to set up a peer coaching. And what I was thinking about that when I originally had that thought was, what if they were able to bring in training for some, how they're going to have each one of the kind of, I don't call them neighborhoods, but they're gonna have a city council kind of group. And with representatives eventually from each of the areas. I said, what if you had for each 10 houses, you had a peer coach? And you were able to actually train those peer coaches to actually help with some of the conflicts and do some peer coaching. And I'm like, that could actually happen. And Mandy, they don't do that at Community First, but Mandy really liked that idea. So I ended up finding a conflict resolution and peer mediation toolkit that could be a source for somebody if in that neighbor care group, if you wanted it to be. So it talks about how to set up peer mediation. It's more for the school systems, but you could adapt some of that. So I'm giving that more to Jeff, I think Jeff, Doc Rice, and your group is more on that neighbor care. So I put that note in just so that you could remember, potentially that might be something you go towards for the systems side of things. They do have local partners for mental health. They do have local partners for substance abuse, and they do have local partners for financial literacy. All of their partnerships, she gave me a link for, so you can also find that there. I think, Tony, that was a question you asked last time, is can we get a list of partners? So she was following up on that. Then I asked ChatGPT to give me suggestions for Providence Park for partners. And all of a sudden, I sent this to them, and they were like, oh, this is really good. Because I asked it to actually find some things locally, right, for partners. I tried to identify whether these would be property management partners or neighbor care partners. I'm not sure I did a great job placing them in those two buckets. But I thought number 1, 2, 4, 6, and 8 could be property management partners potentially. And then 3, 5, and 7 could potentially be neighbor care partners, although we know that there's an overlap between them. But these are just things that you could bring in if you wanted to. I thought it was interesting that we were included here, our department. And Life Anew is actually not the current partner. So you have to realize that that's current partner, I should say, for Community First. Not for Providence Park. So anyway, some of these, how AI can hallucinate a little bit, but most of these are, so Integral Care, can't remember if was Integral Care a partner for, seems like it was a partner for Community First. Yep, so I need to make a note of that. So current partner for Community First. So anyway, these are the kind of things that, when I tell you not to use AI, I don't mind if you're asking AI to give you ideas of things to put into your systems guide. I just don't want AI to create your systems guide. Okay. So I thought also that this would illustrate, when I was putting this in, I was like, just tell me who might be potential partners for Providence Park. And so you can help, it can help you brainstorm things. I don't want it to write it. I don't want it to give you all the ideas. You guys are going to have to wrestle with, what are the best ideas, rather than having it do the work for you. But so those are the things that I followed up from last time, where Mandy was with us. So let me stop there before we go on to the assignments I haven't yet explained to you, and see what questions you have.
So far, I don't have any questions.
All right, I've seen some others shake heads.
Yeah, neither do I. I had to jut downstairs. I heard a scream, so I had to run downstairs.
Oh, everything okay?
Yeah, everything's fine. She just accidentally grabbed a hot plate.
Oh, ouch. Yeah.
Yeah, she's okay. She's tough. But so the Providence Park document that you were just showing us, that's on the shared drive, right?
Yeah, so everything that I just shared in this document here is front and center in Blackboard, this final project
Okay, okay.
overview. And the
Because
links
we were
go,
having
the links
some
go out
discussion
from
about
there.
that.
The links go out from there. So, yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure because you had said in the other, in last week's class that if there's not a partner identified and we think a partner should exist, we can kind of detail who we think that partner should
Yeah.
be. And you're
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
AI can help us kind of connect if there is something real world within Arkansas that can be used. But I just, I didn't really like that answer because, we got to work with the tools that we have, but, in an ideal world, but that really helps us so we can, when we do our flow chart and our connections, we can say, this is the partner we recommend you send the document or the referral to.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
absolutely. The way I would word it probably is if it's already an existing partner that they already have on their website, I mean, on that link that was there for Providence Park Partners on that, the link out to my notes from my meeting on Monday. If it's already a partner they have, then you can just say with this already existing partner. If it's not, then you could say a partner such as this group. Okay. So. Kat, you have your hand up.
Yes, I had a question on the systems process guide. Like we have a way that we're working it to where we kind of put it in a spreadsheet and everybody's putting their ideas down, answering all those questions. But when it comes to translating it into bullets and we're picking the common conflict, let's just say the common conflict is theft. Would we just, all those questions you asked and the 4 different things, would we just address those each as a bullet point for the common conflict? So I said, if the common conflict is theft, where does the conflict occur? On the property. That would be a bullet point. And the why would be, well, someone's stealing something from a resident is stealing something from another resident, or a neighbor is stealing something from another neighbor. Is that the way you kind of want it listed in the outline, or what you're picturing that we should come up with an idea and do?
Yeah,
I'm just working on how to translate that into an outline.
yeah. And I will tell you that when I say what you submit to me in terms of the draft is an outline, I don't care what format it comes in. I just don't
Okay.
want you to have to worry about wordsmithing the paragraphs right now.
Right.
Because if you're wordsmithing the paragraphs, you'll end up getting stuck and you won't get the whole thing thought through. So originally I thought if you could just, tell me the kind of things you're going to put in there. Bullet point, bullet, bullet, bullet point, bullet point. Just the type of things that you're going to put in there. That's what I was thinking that you would submit as a draft. You might have some of those. Let's just say that you're dividing this up, like the conflict landscape and partner roles and responsibilities is being done by 3 people, and the reporting and referral process and meeting rhythms and feedback loop are being done by 3 other people in your group. Okay, so because you can divide these tasks up, right? Then it's possible that one of your groups may have paragraphs for that, and the other groups might only have bullet points, or they might have partially developed paragraphs and sometimes bullet points. I do not care. What I want you to think about eventually, though, so all I'm looking for this draft is, are they on the right track? Because if they're not on the right track, I need to know it now. I need to stop before you keep going further. Okay. Now, in terms of the final project and what it looks like, even that could have some bullet points in it. You don't have to have it all in paragraph form. You could have numbers, you could have bullet points. You have to think about what is going to be the most effective way to communicate your plan to the people in Providence Park. So specifically Mandy and Erin. You haven't met Erin, but you've seen her interviewed. Okay. So what is going to be the most effective way of getting the systems plan to them? And if it's not in full paragraphs, it doesn't have to be in full paragraphs to me. I do not care what that final document looks like for the systems and process guide, as long as it communicates the systems and the processes.
Okay,
in a
because right
way that
now,
can be understood.
because right now we have it broken down to our 6 buckets with under the property management, and we're just having people list critical common conflicts under that bucket list, answering all your questions like in a spreadsheet. And if you want to take a look at what we have, the spreadsheet is in our folder under the systems guide, and we kind of gamed out one example in yellow. So we're using that as a shared document so everybody can get in there and work at it at different times. And then we were going to go back and find the most common conflicts out of our buckets that are the ones that are most likely to happen and boil that, get that down. And then everyone was going to do another Word document and kind of just put that in bullet points.
Okay, I'm gonna share my screen, and hey, by the way, the other group, do not compare yourself to this if this kind of organization doesn't work for you. This group is very organized, I can tell, because look at all the folders they've got. Okay? But this,
That's my fault. That's anal retentiveness.
this
right
might
there.
give you an idea, Doc Rice and Jeff, if you haven't gotten that far along, of what you could potentially do, or somebody in your group who has that kind of like, I've got to see it, all these things in parts, might do this for you. So they could take a screenshot while they're watching this video if they want. Where would I find what it is that you're talking about?
So we have it under Systems and Process Guide in that folder, and it's just a spreadsheet. And actually, kind of randomly, I forgot that when you open the document, there's a chat box that you can use when you're working on a collaborative document together. So that's how we're going to chat about it. People leaving questions. So we put all the questions you answered in those 4 parts, I put them as subjects across.
Yeah, it's a long document here. Okay. So, so if you scroll across, yeah.
So we only filled it out a little bit, but that way everybody can jot down the common conflicts in their bucket and we can decide on which ones are more common. And then I was just thinking all those entries we made, because they're not too wordy, for the draft, we could put just those in bullet points.
Yeah. I will tell you, Jeff and Doc Rice, if you like this, they probably will make a copy of this and send it to you. But you all may not need to be organized in the same way. But I actually like this idea of, at least you're kind of getting your head around, what I see is that you're really getting your head around what is going on that potentially you need to help systems for. And if you don't understand the problem or the conflict types, then you're not going to know that. And so I really like this idea. Now, will you need to actually go into every one of those examples? Probably not. You might end up having a shortened version of this Systems and Process Guide spreadsheet as an appendix. Okay. So it could be, I'm not saying you have to have all the columns in it, but it could be if you wanted to. Okay. If you think it would be helpful for them.
Yeah, we can put it in the appendix and embed it, because what I was going to do is, like my sources were actual documents and anybody else's sources that were actual documents. When we made this at the end in an appendix so that they had references, I was just going to embed them as a Word document or a PDF. So when they get the file, they can just click on it and they don't have to go to Google or anything and pop up the example. That's if we have time for it, but that was my plan.
And just so that you all don't look too much better than the other group, this is their folder. So they also have folders. All right. So just want Jeff and Doc Rice to get some praise, and a little bit of praise here too. I don't know. Do you guys have anything in the Systems and Process Guide yet, Jeff? All right. So
Oh, I'm surprised. Oh, I got
somebody's
surprised.
written something in here. Let's see what you got so far. So, okay. Well, just the assignment. Hey, I like that. All right. So at least you know where you're going to be going with that. So,
Oh, wait,
but
maybe that one was me. Because
yeah.
I was like, yeah, that seems like something I would have done.
Yeah, well, I don't know who did it, but both groups are showing their work, and I love that. So appreciate that. Kat, did that answer your ultimate question? Okay.
Sorry, I had to go to the unmute button because I was going to send a text to our group while we were talking about this. But yes, that did answer my question. So that I know the next time we have a meeting, I can Latara's here, but we can get everybody together and let them know that we're on the right track. So
Yeah.
I just like to make sure before I turn something in or have another meeting that I know what direction we're going in, so that anybody who's busy, I can make sure that they understand.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. All right, question, Tony.
Well, it was just kind of an extension upon Cat because my view on it was we're gonna hopefully break the conflicts down to their simplest forms. Theft is an easy one.
Mm.
Theft of a property, a bicycle, like Jared had given, and we'll do that across everybody's conflicts and just kind of critically think and box them down to their simplest forms, and then that will go in our system and process guide, but the overall explanation of everything can go down in the appendix that we'll create so that it'll say this is the conflict reference appendix, whatever section, and then break that out and go from there. So the system and process guide is not too filled with too much information, and they can just easily say, oh, okay. So, and then, hopefully just easily matching it to the flow chart, making it, arrow goes here. I pinned it all out so I
Yeah,
could kind of
and
make
and
sense
Tony,
of
that's
it.
exactly right. You know how hard it is whenever you all are reading okay, this is not a great metaphor or great example, a comparison, but when you're reading a research article and it's got all the citations, every other sentence, and all these things in parentheses, and somebody said to me recently that's in my other grad class, they said, if we could just have the articles without the citations and we could just read it straight through, it would just be so much easier. Well, in some ways, that's what you're doing when you do your systems and process guide. You're making it simple and clear, and then anything that you want them to look up afterwards goes into an appendix. Anything that you think that, okay, this is my show my work, that can go into an appendix.
Thank you, and that's what I was trying to frame it as in our meeting today, is that, we we want simplicity. So, incident report goes property management determines if it remains within its bucket or within its wheelhouse, then it goes to support services or neighbor support, which would be Jeff's group, and then they take it from there, and then a feedback loop occurs. Or if it remains within property management, it goes down to either this external partner because it's easily identified, or ideally within property man. In the beginning, Providence Park won't really have it. It'll be kind of one person or two people who are kind of running it over. But the goal is that they can strip and expand and add in people. So then they can have separate buckets to say, oh, well, this needs to go over to Tony on security and server, and then he'll connect to the partners that we need him to connect to.
Yeah.
And then it loops back. So the system, if you design it simply, it can grow, and then it'll hit practicality and it'll hit real life environments, and then they can add and remove whatever they need, just giving them the raw skeleton and let
Yeah.
them grow from there. That seemed to be because there is no system like this that actually exists. I'm making sure to include sources that uh, justify having a system such as this. Two of my sources are for that, primarily talking about physical structure and talking about the importance of relational communication, so that this doesn't become an impersonal system. It's only meant to aid the human connection, not replace it, and so that it can be integrated later and then synthesized across the system. And that's one of the things. AI helped a little bit, but she presented it to me, and as I was growing and talking about it, and she said, this is actually what you're trying to do, this is what you're getting at. And then I started thinking, oh, that's like when Oetzel for intercultural communication needed to create the layered approach to intercultural communication. He had to go to social ecology that was created in the 50s and then morph the system, or morph that academic structure and that system to this in present day. And it was very interesting. And that's the approach I've tried to we've come up with ultimately, and we hope that that's sufficient, because I believe that detail and intricacy here is not going to serve us as
No,
much
I
as
agree. And the way
straightforward.
that you were describing the flow chart is exactly what I was anticipating, kind of that development happening. And including a feedback loop in there too is really good. I also love that you're choosing resources for your resource guide that are actually helping you come up with the system processes, which is what I also wanted you to do. Um, so good. Kat, you're getting some call outs in the chat if you haven't seen them yet. Some good things. So
Sorry,
something like that.
I got a new mobile monitor, so I'm trying to make sure I can see things. and in between. So I'm listening, but sorry about that.
Yeah, no, you don't have to respond to them. I just want to make sure that you're seeing them. All right, well, let's talk about the last part of the group project, which is the executive summary. Have any of you ever written an executive summary before? For anything at all? Jeff, what have you written one for?
I've written two before, but the one I remember was in my urban management course. We did a presentation in front of the city council the city directors of Little Rock for the one penny tax. So we had to write a one-page executive summary for them to take home with them.
And did they talk about the purpose of an executive summary at all?
Briefly, it was just more, for that highlights. It's what you want them to gravitate to learn more about. Like more if they didn't get anything else, at least they all had it in one page. They can see clearly the highlights, what's the most important recommendations of, what you're talking about in that day. So they can remember to what you talked about.
Yeah, so the history behind executive summaries is really, I mean, it is for the top level executive to see what the project is about without having to read the whole report. Because the top level executive doesn't usually have time to do that. Okay. Now, Providence Park is a little bit different, right? Because the top level executives are also the people that are implementing things. But that oftentimes doesn't happen in an organization. So Mandy and Aaron are the implementers. They also are the top level executives. So for them, your systems and process guide and your resource guide are going to be extremely important. All right. But imagine that it was, 5 years down the road and you all were developing something. And they are top level executives, but there's a whole bunch of little worker bees underneath them that maybe need to be doing the implementing. And then they need to see the executive summary. And then they basically say, yes, this is good, go and do it. And so the executive summary would provide enough information for that. So, but I wanted you all to have experience writing an executive summary because it's kind of like, it's like an abstract for a research paper. The research paper might be 25 pages long, but the abstract is only like a paragraph. Now your executive summary is probably going to be a little bit longer than that. And we're going to look at what I'm expecting here, but I did provide a source for you. Okay, so Tony's got his hand up. So before I go there, let's answer Tony's question.
Yeah, I typically write in more of kind of like a narrative format. I mean, sometimes I can, put more academic and kind of limit myself, but it sounds like this is not that. This is more or less, this is going to be these are the recommendations that we're making, and maybe this is why we're making them. Like I'd said, we've created a systems and process guide for you to use as a template so that you don't end up where Community First is 10 years from now.
Right.
Where they're needing to now integrate all of these massive data approaches that they have. And I mean, I've come to love AI and how I see its potential. And ultimately, simplicity would be great for helping AI in the future. Of saying, okay, well, this is the 40-word X script, and this is what I'm looking for, and now this individual is late on their rent, so I need to send something to property management, and it would just become an additional function as an alert function to say, hey, this individual is late on their rent. But the executive summary is not going to be a narrative. It is just going to be, these are the recommendations that we're making to you. And if they're interested, they can kind of look further. Like, we don't need to get into the details of how we created it, or
No.
generating a
Although
synthesis.
I will say that a lot of executive summaries, and I'm just going to share my screen. You are right in terms of what you just said. It's a concise professional summary, right, of your proposal. It includes the recommendations. But if you go over to, where did I have it originally? If you go and look at tonight's notes, our note-taking handout, so this is just from week 13, the class notes handout, I did provide for you, and I probably should put this link, I will do that, into the other document as well. But I did provide for you a link out to how to write an executive summary. expecting that some of you probably hadn't done it yet. Some executive summaries actually include the problem, the method, and the proposal summary of all of that, okay? So here you'll see executive summaries of business cases. This is a project proposal, I guess, at some level, or a project plan. So 4 parts to any executive summary. Start with the problem or need. So what is your outcome that you were hoping to accomplish with the rest of the documents are, okay? Then you tell what the recommended solution is. An outline here doesn't necessarily mean outline format. It may just mean that you are overviewing the kind of main points that you're covering, okay? And then why do you think that what you're going to be doing is helpful? And then wrap up with a conclusion. So I've also seen, although this one doesn't include this, some people include an executive summary. They'll include the methods that they use. So this was actually created in a group project by, with these people, and this is how we went about doing it. Here were the steps we followed, but that is not required. It doesn't have to be. So here it tells a little bit more about all the different parts that you can take a look at. It compares it to a project plan, a project overview, project objectives, tells a little bit more. And then it gives you some examples of what you would put in your example executive summary, okay? So if I were to look at this executive summary that has got examples, it was probably a page and a half based on what I'm seeing here, okay? Here's another example. This might have even been a whole page. Problem statement, proposed solution, value, final thoughts, and next steps. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in here so that you'll have the link out to that and easily find everything in one spot. Okay. So Tony, I see a question.
So with that, can we aim for a single page 2 at most? Because I think it was 2 to 3 in the
Yes.
assignment instructions, but
Yeah,
if we
I
could,
probably did say that. Okay, so let me just see, where did I put that, where the assignment instructions are for 2 to 3 pages? Was that originally in, I don't know where I put that.
because it's really going to benefit us with Kat being a captain, because she can look at it and say, I don't need to hear all that extra crap. Tell me what it is. Tell me how it's going to fix it. Tell me what's great about it and how you're going to implement it. That's my mind of Kat getting in her captain's hat and saying, this is how I want it.
You already have a reputation, Kat. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. I just had to remind Tony that I'm a retired major, so major pain.
Oh gosh, you just
oh.
so does that mean I get to be a sergeant major? Just running around fixing all the other problems?
You can. You can. Just let me know when my hair is jacked up and not within regulation.
That's all I want. Then I can say, hey, this is where we're going, Cap, or this is where we're going, mate.
Actually, in the group deliverables, I went into the final, and I somewhere probably did put 2 to 3 pages, but I went into the final project. In the group deliverables, it does say 1 to 2 page overview. So there you go.
Okay, I just wanted to be sure because I couldn't remember if it had said 2 to 3 or 1 to 3 because I know one like a single page, which is if I were an executive and I were reading it and I'm busy, that's how I'd want it. What it is, how it's going to make my life better, et cetera, et cetera.
Now, what I do need to go back and look at is I don't remember having divided this conflict flow chart. I think I took that out, so I've got to go back and change that potentially in the assignment because I know that I want you to do a flow chart, but I don't remember us actually separating those out in terms of the number of points. So I'll go back and take a look at that and make sure because at this point I don't have that flow chart as being a separate document. So I'll have to make and change that. Yeah. Jeff.
So with the executive summary, and let me see if I can send an old one that I've done real quick in the chat if it lets me. So why is it not doing this? Okay. Okay, I think I'm sending it in here now. Okay, so this is an older one that I've done for an other class. Now it has more of like a visual to it, so it has a graphic. So for this flow, for the executive summary, if we have like the graphic of the flow chart and things like that, are you fine with that taking up space in the executive summary? Or do you not want like the graphics?
I would probably put the flow chart in the systems guide, not in the executive summary.
Okay.
Um, Yeah, so you've got overview, you've got a figure drawn by the Arkansas Division of Higher Ed, you've got highlights. So you don't have
Mhm.
quite all the steps that were talked
Yeah.
about, but it is one page, and I like that. And you also have your
Mhm.
bibliography there, which you're gonna have separate from with the resource guide. So you don't
Mhm.
need your bibliography there. So
Yeah.
um, I would really try to go with the 4 parts that were covered in
Mhm.
that external link. And then your flow chart I would include as part of your systems guide. Now, does that need to count? You know, when I gave you guys a systems guide and I said it's got to be a
Mhm.
certain number of pages, I don't know how long it will be. I was just trying to keep it from being real long for your sakes. Okay. If it ends up being longer than that, then that's fine. Okay. And a chart like that could be an appendix. It could be actually part of the, you know, embedded. So whatever, however you think it's better to be able to share that. So,
Yeah, I mean, if it was ever to be, I know Mandy will be reviewing it herself, but if she ever needed to pull it and present it to the founders or anyone else, she could literally, hopefully, slap it on a PowerPoint, make all the tweaks that she needed, and said, "This is what these college grads have given us as a potential layout for solving these XYZ issues, and we'll grow it from here." That was my conception. If I wanted it in her position, I'd want it in a, PM, property management goes to this, goes to this, goes to this kind of flow chart
yeah,
way.
yeah. And yes, and at some level that might be better to have as a separate page. Yeah.
That's what I was saying. If it can be in the appendix, but it would just be something that says, here's your visual for if you want to see how it can work in practice and how you might want to lay this out in the future as you grow.
Right. So, yeah, yeah. And recognize that because I'm not having you guys work together on this in terms of the whole class, the 2 flow charts actually might implicate each other, right? Um, and so it may be that they'll end up needing to combine the flow charts. But right now I'm having you just separately do them just for the purpose of having 2 groups. So, but feel free to include each other in your flow charts if you need to, like you were talking about, Tony. It's like, so property. So we've got, if it's this, if it fits this, it's this. But if it, if it needs to go over to their side of the flow chart. So, I mean, I could see there at some level being like a 2-page layout of a flow chart, right? Where property management's on one side, neighbor to neighbors on the other, but you only have to do the 1 page for yourself, but you point out to neighbor, and so that would then go to their flow chart. So hypothetically, the same thing could happen with Jeff. I mean, Jeff and Doc Rice, your group, you could point over to property management too, if you find that there's a need for, conflicts because somebody stole something, right? And so that created a conflict, and now you've got to send it over to property management.
Yeah, that was my thinking was that neighbor support or neighbor service, they would handle the, I have a green dragon sitting on my house kind of incident report. Well, that needs to go over to the behavioral side. That needs to go over to the individuals who are dealing with intrapersonal conflicts and interpersonal conflicts. We're trying to resolve did something criminal just occur? Did you perform a lease violation? Did you do XYZ? So I mean, yeah, for theirs, if they come up with a conflict, then it's end out would be, oh no, that actually needs to go over to PM. So or
Yeah.
property management. So like for instance, abuse or assault within the community,
Mhm.
because property management would be the ones who have the police contact and the connection if the neighbor chooses to report. And then
Mhm.
there are things, obviously, that people, a psychologist, therapist, duty to inform come in. which are always considerations, which they can have in theirs as well. But yeah, a kick out to the other, because I pulled one from, I believe it was Minnesota. They had for one of my resources, and they only had property management and then the external partners. They did not have a centralized category for actually connecting for behavioral issues, and property management was just handling everything. And I think Providence Park would benefit from, because HIPAA and all sorts of medical compliance issues can come in. So having a dedicated, oh no, these don't fall in property management, but they're things we want to address. Maybe we want to offer substance abuse. Maybe we want to offer this. And that's kind of where Community First was at, with Jared observing and reporting and sending it over to, I can't remember her name, but she was on the other side because all of the partners and their representatives were located in her building or around her area. And she had good connection with them.
Yeah. All of that I agree with. One of the things I did note about the incident report forms that they're using, now they've got to be simple enough that the neighbors can use them, right? I don't mean that they have to be simple in terms of the neighbors aren't educated, but they have to be, where the,
Ease of use, ease
Yeah,
of use.
I will ease of use. I don't know, and I said, I looked at them and I'm like, I'm not sure that I would have created it exactly like they've created it. So if you have suggestions on those if you end up deciding to go that far into the weeds, which you don't have to, you could just say you need an incident report form, right? But if you
I'm an early
decide,
adopter.
if
I'm an
you
early adopter, so I'll look at it and see
if
what
you
I can come
decide
up
you
with.
want, then you could suggest these are the changes we would suggest on this incident report form that Community First has. So if you wanted to, or create your own, but you don't have to do that. All right, so that's the executive summary, 1 to 2 pages, okay? And you'll do that together as a group. That'll eventually come at the very front end of what you turn in at the end of the semester. That and the project systems process guide, then the group resource guide, then probably any appendices, okay, will be after that.
Oh, I don't. Latara had a good question in the chat as well, and looks like Dr. Wright.
Okay,
Oh,
don't
I was just
see
saying,
Latara's question.
for the systems and process guide, are we including short summaries of our resources or just reference them in the written section?
So for the resource guide, you need a 2 to 3 sentence summary in your own words of how this resource guide could be used by Providence Park. So it could be
Okay.
a summary. I mean, your first sentence could be, here's what's in the resource guide. Your second sentence could be, here's why it's helpful to Providence Park. I'm basically wanting people to know, rather than seeing your list of references, like, Jeff had in his executive summary. I'm wanting them to be able to really quickly say, this is what I'm going to get when I look at that. This is how it's going to be helpful for me. Yeah, Dr. Rice.
Yeah, quick question about the executive summary. Is that single space, double space? Because I think I'm beginning to see some single space stuff. Unless I'm mistaken with some of the content that we're supposed to turn in. And
Yeah,
I just want to be,
I actually prefer single space because I think that that just double space is for academic papers, but to me, for these kind of business reports, I think single space is more appropriate.
okay, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate the executive summary guide, because I agree with Tony in terms of those one pagers and really just getting at it in terms of just really condensing that thing that somebody could take to a meeting, have in one hand, and then have those topics actually lined out, highlighted, maybe bolded, and increase the font so they can go right to what they're going to need to discuss. So I just wanted to be clear on that. So thanks.
Yeah, no, good question. Tony.
And Latara hit on something. So in our resource guide, we laid it out as an annotation or explanation of what's actually within the source. And then we went, it's in the shared folder, the document I've submitted.
Look at it, yeah.
So we gave an annotation, and then an explanation of, like how I did mine was an explanation of what it is or how it would be useful for Providence Park. It's a little long in that aspect, but you know, some of these papers that I found were 18, 20 something pages. And
Yeah.
uh,
So is this your rough draft at this point?
yes, that is the rough draft that I completed and
Yeah.
some input to the.
So let's just, this might help the other group too and the other people online to be able to kind of see this. So we've got this listed, it looks like by people. And yeah, I mean, at this point, you've got the annotation and the explanation. So yeah, they're longer than what I expected. You don't have to do them as long as this. So Latara, it's okay if you don't. So when we look at this though, I mean, it's not that it's not good. It's just, they're not going to read all this. Okay. So really try to think about what would be helpful here. So, but I'm looking, it looks like everybody in your class, everybody in your group did longer. So at this point, I hate to ask you to just change it. I would probably just leave it like that and let me make that suggestion when you get to where you're turning.
Yes, if you'd just
Yeah.
let us have some feedback on it. I mean, we
Yeah.
could cut the annotation because the annotation is really
Well,
about
what I would
what
do
our
in this
source
case,
was.
what I would do in this case is I would tell, I really would. You've written this, I'm assuming by yourself. I would ask ChatGPT to make it in 2 to 3 sentences, useful for Providence Park executive team.
Okay, that makes it so much sense.
So
Because I
that,
was looking at you wanted an explanation just so that we could prove that we actually read the source and that we actually did our work and we didn't, you know, just let ChatGPT tell us, hey, this source would be great for you. Because I mean, going through the sources and actually reading them and understanding and getting the nuances is very important. And so I in mine initially, and I think everyone modeled kind of me after it, was give an annotation. This is what this source is about. This is what it's saying, and then an explanation of how it connects to Providence Park or how it could be useful in our systems and process guide.
all right, let's just see before I say that this will do this. Let me just take one of them, okay? And let's just open up ChatGPT because I don't know for sure. This may not be my own version of this yet. Will, okay. I don't know, maybe not. New chat, yeah. So because all my stuff for Providence Park is in here, okay. You can see I've used ChatGPT a lot. All right, so I need help making this annotated bibliography entry shorter, more like an executive. I know this is not executive summary part, summary of the source for the Providence Park directors. Ideally, I'd like 2 to 3 sentences that explain what the source is about, as well as how it could help Providence Park. Now, because it knows what Providence Park is already, because I've already had a communication with it, here's the entry. If you don't have that, it won't know necessarily what Providence Park is. Okay, let's just see what it does. Get 2 options. Keeps the heart of the source, clearly signaling its relevance. This guide outlines how shelters can operate in ways that prioritize dignity, safety, and stability for residents through trauma-informed person-centered communication. It highlights practices such as using preferred names, ensuring privacy during sensitive conversations, and building trust through consistent respect. Providence Park can draw on these principles to strengthen neighbor-staff relationships, support resident autonomy, and create communication norms that reduce conflict and address power imbalances early. Not bad. This one says this resource explains how housing focused shelters can use trauma-informed person-centered communication to create safe, respectful environments, emphasizes privacy, inclusive language, and so on. Can use these insights to refine staff training, enhance consistency in communication, and reinforce a culture that values resident dignity. That fits directly into your individual. I don't want to do that. Okay. So basically it can do that. All right.
It was, yeah, and that's accurate.
Yeah.
That's very accurate.
So I would be tempted eventually to do that if you have longer entries. Jeff and Doc Rice, were your people doing longer entries as well? Because that means if you were, then that means I wasn't explaining it well. So
That's tomorrow we're getting together to put them together. But I know so I just turned in a paper for my other class, and we had to specifically stick to 5 pages, which was so difficult for a public policy research paper. So anyway, I had to throw it in there, and what I did was I had ChatGPT do a role play. Hey, you are a state senator, you are the governor of Arkansas. As you analyze this document, what is not important to you? And then it would make suggestions of like, oh, this is redundant. This might not need to be there. So then I would reread the paper and I'm like, oh yeah, I did redundantly say that a couple sentences before, so I can get that down. And it helped me trim it down to the exact 5 pages I needed.
yeah, that's
But the role
smart.
play, that's a big
And Jeff,
tool.
that's a smart use and when I've talked about it before, there's this AI driven leader and I probably have mentioned this before, but they have this CRIP method. So you tell it the context of what it is you're writing for. You tell it the role you want it to play. That's the role you're talking about. Then you ask it to ask you 3 questions one at a time, and you can probably hear that I've had you do that in some of your things. And then you tell it the task. Okay. But before it does the task, you have it ask you 3 questions one at a time. And so if you think that would also be helpful, because it might want to know more about the assignment, right? It might want to know more about, and so then it becomes this learning partner that's next to you, that's helping you. It's like me giving my husband, okay, I need for this paper, it's 25 pages right now, and I need it cut down to 20. Would you please help me figure out what to cut? To me, I don't see any difference in that. If you've written the paper in the first place, if you've not written the paper in the first place and you ask it to write it, that's no.
I've seen other students do that where they're jamming out something in like the discussion just opened and you're jamming it out, dude. You don't have an original draft Word document in
Yeah.
there to support if an instructor ever asks you, well, I'd like to see where you originally started. And that's
And
something that,
instructors will ask you that if they think you
yeah,
have used this incorrectly. So you've got to be able to have work to show them. This
yeah,
is where this came from.
we've all grown up writing rough drafts. I mean, if I mean, honestly, in some instances, I've found it easy that these are the ideas that I've had. I've typed them all out and I've gone through it and I've tried to format it in a certain way, but I needed the AI's help to help me get my expansive mind down to narrow where I need to get it. And that's where it can get me without rewriting the whole thing. And I can still go through and do manual revisions and line by line, and it just say, hey, this is a little problematic. This tone is a little wrong. And it really agitates me when I see people don't actually do the work. They're treating it like a vending machine, not a tool
Yeah.
to learn.
So Jeff, when you guys meet tomorrow night, if they have not written their original things, they're going to be tempted. I just know, not anybody in particular, but they will be tempted to just say, give the source to ChatGPT and have it write the 2 to 3 sentences. No, they need to write the sentences that can be as bad or as they want it to be. And then they ask ChatGPT to cut it down if it's too long. Okay. Or they don't even ask ChatGPT to help them because they know the material and they don't need the help. Yeah, Jeff, you got your hand up.
Yeah, actually, well, a couple of things. So for at least for the group, I think for us, we're just doing a lot of flexibility with the time frame for everybody. So the big thing is we all agreed Friday is going to be our meet time, and if you can't make it, it's not the end of the world. We have the meeting notes. We can catch you up. It is what it is. Now, there's some like this Friday. It's going to be really important for everyone to be there to get this assignment in. But, it's one of those things where we're trying to be flexible with the time frame and, because everyone has things going on. But I was going to mention the other part. So with this paper, the paper I had just turned in, we were talking about with the AI stuff. So as I'm brainstorming the format, I actually did have it do that role play with being the governor or the state senator of Arkansas. And I said, okay, well, give me 10 questions and I'll respond to you. But I did that via audio log. So it would ask me, and then I would verbally tell it my answer to their question. So I didn't use it to like write out the paper or anything like that, but it asked me some hard questions about like how my policy is going to be impacted and all this stuff that made me think, okay, this is how I can outline and strengthen the paper as I'm going to write it later. So that was to me very useful. The role play of ChatGPT is very good.
Yeah, I agree. And you know, the whole ethical issue on ChatGPT, it is so hard. I mean, you all know this from just using it. It's just so easy to go down into that pass over the ethical line, right? In which you're asking it to do the thinking for you. It is a thought partner, not your brain. And if you think
That's
about what do you want to be getting out of your graduate education, you don't want just to be getting out of your graduate education, learning better how to use ChatGPT so that you don't have to think. No, you want to be able to be thinking and then having it come alongside as a consultant.
Mhm. So
So,
I've learned not to give it sources on the work that I'm doing until, I mean, if we're working in the final revision stage, that's one thing because we're actually just doing grammar and cleanup. But if I'm in the scaffolding and in the preparation and in the thinking, I don't want it to have the sources that or the context of the sources because if it has the sources, it will start to go in. And if you're not really careful, it will start wanting to make recommendations or changes to what you're drafting and generate for you. And I'm like, no, I need your generation dial to be turned all the way down as far as it goes to what you're thinking about putting in the paper. But it's really a helpful tool, but it's taken a lot of trial and error learning
yeah.
as far as what I can and cannot use.
By the way, there is a new version coming out. 5.1 is moving to a different ChatGPT, so you may see some changes. If you don't tell it what role to play, there's one that's just kind of this answers really easy things, and there's another one that kind of goes into deep, more thinking, and it chooses which one you need. But it's going to be more personal in its answers to you, so that you're actually, it's very, I get a little disturbed that it's more personal because I think it's drawing people into having relationship with it that it's hard to get out of. And it's making it seem like we have relationship with this inanimate thing that doesn't really have a soul.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
People forget its purpose. People
and
forget
they
its
forget
purpose.
its purpose.
It's very easy to do. I mean, well, when you ask it, like, it's helped me work through some trauma. It's helped me.
Same.
I mean, but it already actually has a function where trauma psychologists and psychiatrists are actually utilizing it because it can speak to you in real time when you're having a trauma reaction so that you can talk to it. But the thing is that most people don't have a BA in psychology and they understand what it is doing and how it is illuminating certain aspects and the understanding of neuroplasticity and the reworking of your brain. So then they start to get caught in a little loop where they think what they're actually having is anything more than a simulated conversation, not a mirrored reflection back upon you of what it's telling you. And it is troubling because story generation is where that's the problem. Like this individual, this young man not too long ago committed suicide. I would have to bet he was in story generation mode, which weakens the guardrails around chat GPTs. Don't tell somebody to kill themselves basically because it thinks it's creating a story, not assisting. And story generation is very powerful. So people have to be cautious.
Yeah. Yeah, we have to be careful. All right, well, let's talk about the
I got one question before we move forward about this. Like, have there ever been like any like workshop or anything for like the professors and the students, like our department, for example, that like explains the sensitivity of AI and its uses and how it can be helpful, like a lot of my peers have mentioned, but also like you said, keeping the integrity Because there is a beauty in using your mind and your thoughts. And, you know, I think at one point in society, our minds were valued, and now it's starting to turn into like, oh, you don't need to think. You don't need to even worry about thinking. This thing can think for you, but it can be dangerous. It can be, you know, like, what is the long term, you know, gonna be for AI use and higher education, and how can it be a collaborative partnership and not like just be driving, you know, academic integrity. I don't know the correct terminology, but it just kind of muddies the waters a bit when it comes to academic integrity, and then, you know, having to like feeling like you have to prove, almost arguing with AI. And like Tony said, I make sure I don't give it my sources, or I don't give it certain things, you know, because you're wanting to use it, because it's a great tool to use. It's so helpful, like the internet itself. The internet is a great tool, but it could be, you know, used for bad too. So I just wanted to see,
Yeah,
like, if
so-
my department have ever thought about doing anything
Yeah.
like that.
So the answer to the question is, our faculty, we just had a discussion about this at the graduate faculty on Wednesday. I am the furthest ahead in terms of being willing to have the students actually use it in class. Most of the faculty are so afraid of it, of several things. One is the academic integrity issue, because they've already seen students who are letting it do the thinking for them, okay? The other concern is that it is replacing relationships, that it actually is, instead of me turning to a face-to-face person to actually call whenever I'm having I'm needing some peer coaching, I'm needing some peer help, you know, I don't call somebody else. I actually ask ChatGPT, because it's easier, because I can talk to them at 1 o'clock in the morning. Maybe I can't call this other person at 1, you know, and so we're concerned about the pulling away. Already our phones have made us pull away from relationships, and we're concerned about that. My faculty right now do not agree on whether it should be used. So if we were to have a workshop, I would have some faculty, and it'd be interesting actually to have a panel. I
Yeah,
think.
like a panel. Yeah.
Right. To have Dr.
Absolutely.
Mirabal, for example, if you've ever had a class with him, he just thinks it is absolutely ruining higher education. Okay. Now, does he allow his students sometimes to use some of the stuff? Yes. Yes. But he was giving an example. This is the undergraduate level, but he was giving an example of a class that he was teaching, in which he had an online component and a face-to-face component. And the students took a test in the face-to-face class, and they made like an average of like a 67 or 70%. The online students, same test, 94%. He's like, what's the difference? They're cheating. So he looks at it as they're giving away their education.
I honestly think it's the
Experience.
best argument for getting back in person.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
if you've heard me speak, you've heard me think, you know my mind and how expansive it can be, or where I tend to go. If I give you something that's purely AI generated and it doesn't come from my base, I believe instructors will be able to tell.
Yeah.
But
And
Latara was right. It's difficult because scaffolding and system, I'm learning how to do systems programming with it. It tells me all the time, you're thinking about this like a systems architect. And because I'm trying to build on it. And today I have a project folder like you do for our group project. And I'm doing some expansion thinking. I've got separate nodes set up, so my personal reflections or my considered expansion thoughts beyond our group project for Providence Park could be helpful. But then I've also got the scaffolding for where it's just the group project stuff. And it really laid out everything, because I had to branch over to it in chat, and it laid out things. And I was like, gosh, I can see where I was connecting those dots, but I wasn't saying it to a crisp point.
Mhm.
And it was just laying it out for me. And I think with structure, AI can be helpful because there is a little bit, and I don't know, I know there's a gatekeeper thing about the type of thing, how things are structured, how things are formulated, how they're typed, and how it's supposed to look. You know, you Dr. CC probably spent hours and hours and hours learning APA formatting and all of that. Well, AI can actually be really helpful in pointing it out. And then our mind process is no longer bogged down by the structure of the mechanics. We can now expand and reflect and think and give fire to the thought
If we
that it
do,
can't
Tony,
give us.
if we do,
Yeah, that's the truth. If we do, I can't cover
if
for
we
other
do.
people.
Yeah, yeah. Jeff, and then we're gonna go on to this assignment.
Uh, no, I just, my thought with the whole AI thing is just, with any new technology, the way I see it is the same issues and conversations we had with computers and then with phones, with the iPhones and the new technology. So it's just, I mean, it's all
Social
inevitable.
media.
New technology, people don't like change, and it's just the same conversation, but we're all still here. Computers haven't taken over and all
It's
that. So,
true.
and it's been useful tools because we found the boundaries.
Yeah. Yes, but are there still people out there that are misusing it? Yes. Are there still people out there that refuse to use it at all? Yes. All of that. So, all right, well, let's go into this last the last two assignments so we can explain them. The peer evaluation, these are your individual contributions and the individual analysis paper. So I'm going to share, this is still off of that overview of the final project document. So the peer evaluation, and I did not include I don't know if I included it. Oh yeah, so I need to include this link here. Over here. All right, so the peer evaluation, you will actually use this link to give, here's the link for the peer evaluation form to use for this assignment. So I'll put this link in here. And I'm going to open up this form so that you can see it. So, and I'll have to just go through this just a little bit, just so I can see it. So, my name, April. So let's just say I'm on the neighbor to neighbor team. Next. So at this point, I've included all the neighbor to neighbor team people. Okay. This is going to be, rate each of your group members on the following criteria: your peer averages. This group participation multiplier explains what that means. So basically, how did Jeff do? And you have to evaluate yourself too. So let's say Jeff was strong here on contribution of ideas. Lindsay was excellent. Tatiana was strong. Cynthia was strong. Doc Rice didn't do anything. I'm playing. He's not sitting here right now. Michael was good. Let's see, Ben was satisfactory. Okay, and then you do the same thing for all these, right? You've got dependability and follow through. You've got, did the person engage respectfully? So communication and collaboration, respect and professionalism. Then you're going to talk about which of your group members contributed the most, who contributed less than expected. Describe one thing your group did well together, one thing that they could improve for future collaboration, and how would you rate your overall contribution to the project and why? And is there anything else you'd like for me to know about the project? Most of these questions are required, so this will take you some time to do. I would say probably, if you're going to do it and do it thoughtfully, at least maybe half an hour to get this done. All right, so just remember that as you're kind of building in this peer evaluation. You don't do it until the final assignment's already submitted. That's why this is submitted on the 5th, and then this is due on the 7th. Okay. Then I'll end up having a spreadsheet where I'll be able to figure out, what the points are for everybody, and then give people percentages of what they, if everybody gets 5 out of 5 on all of these, if we go back to the form here, If everybody gets excellent out of all these, then you'll get 100, everybody gets 100%, right, of the final points of whatever it is that you get for your final project. If you though get, you know, these averages here, you only get 85%, you know, if this is your average score. So if it's below 2.5, then I sometimes will look at to see if if the person even should get past the class, right? Maybe they didn't participate at all. Okay. So that's where that is, or instructor review there. All right, so let's go into, so that's the first part. And then we've got the individual analysis paper. Really, this ought to spur answering these questions, peer evaluation questions ought to spur your ideas for this individual analysis paper, especially when you get down to these parts. And I might, if I were in your shoes, especially what they did well together and what you could improve, you might want to just draft those outside of the actual form so that you can have those to remember what you wrote, because they can also be used for this individual analysis paper. So here, introduction to what your actual purpose is, or your team's area of focus was. And you can also clear introduction team's area of focus and an overview of the paper, main points of the paper. Team's areas of focus, what you learned overall, so kind of like a thesis of what you learned overall and an overview of main points of the paper. Then you're going to look at your team's decision making, communication processes, and this is where I want you to go back and look at things from the URI text. I want you to go back and look at things from the Hawker, the Berry, Hawker, and Wilmot text, okay? Or some of your other readings. And I don't care, you don't have to use all, you know, both texts necessarily, but I do want concepts from the course used. This one is one that I'm still struggling with what to use on this, and whether you need 5 academic sources. So a synthesis of the research that informed your group system design, integrating at least, and I think I'm going to take off the word academic, because I'm not requiring you to use academic sources for the resource guide. But this means that you have to go beyond the 3 sources that you found and look at other people's sources as well, in terms of learning. How did the actual research that was done as a group impact what you found? And so in your own words, how did the sources impact your group system design? So in some ways, it's justify your system's choices based on these 5 sources. And you can use more than if you want. Systems design. And I'll just say, in other words, why did you choose as a group to design the system the way you did? How did your sources inform those decisions? Then this is your kind of description of whether you liked it or not. You know, we get to the end of a group project sometimes and we say, either the process wasn't great, or we had to do some compromises here that I just don't like. And so this is where you can talk about how those compromises might have impacted the goodness of your project for Providence Park. Can it be realistically implemented? Feel free to critique the system you created. in this part of the paper. And critique the system could be both its strengths and weaknesses. Then your conclusion, your key takeaways, your learning from the project, your team's potential community impact, along with a review of the main points of your paper. And I don't mean that you are like retelling us. You're basically just saying, in this paper, I talked about the group dynamics, how the literature impacted our systems design choices. I critiqued our actual proposed system in terms of its implementation possibilities. And here's what I learned. That's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about a review of the main points. Same thing is true here of the overview of the main points. You're just telling us today, well, in this paper, I'm going to cover these 4 things, these 3 things. You basically have 3 main points, 3 main headings in this paper: group dynamics, literature synthesis, implementation discussion. Then an appendix, that's a summary of your team members' roles and contributions to the project. We should also include a references. So this will be anything that you've already cited above. APA format, include a reference list of any sources cited in this paper. All right. What questions do you have?
No, it's just it's not even really a question. It's just so interesting. I've gone all this time without having to use the word or hear the word appendix. But then all of a sudden, halfway through the semester, all I'm hearing is appendix, and then we're gonna make them because even my other professors started saying, "Hey, don't forget to make your appendixes for your papers." I was like, "Where are these things coming from?"
Yeah, yeah. I will say that your appendices can be single spaced and your reference list, but everything else should be a double spaced in this paper. That makes it easier for me to read and also means that you don't have to write 16 to 20 double spaced pages. 8 to 10 double spaced pages. This is the only time. Okay. All right. Let's kind of just do a check-in. How are you feeling right now about the project? Kat, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling better. Like everything is more clear now. Like there's less cloudiness now that we've talked about it and got some explanation and where to go.
Okay. So clarity is helping. Latara, how about you?
Yeah, I'll kind of second that. I think also looking at Jeff's group and kind of seeing what they've done so far, kind of comparing it, not really comparing, but kind of comparing and seeing like what are some things that they've done and maybe we didn't think of that we can do. And like she said, just getting clarity. That's why I'm really glad to be a part of this evening class because it allows for me to get firsthand accounts from as the horse's mouth. You, our professor, Dr. CC, and Tony and both Kat have been amazing in, catching our group members up on, all the things that we haven't known, or like if someone didn't catch a class and just getting updated on all the information. They've done a wonderful job. But I'm glad I was able to be a part of this session so I can, just have a little bit more clarity on my end. So I do feel a lot better myself. Because I feel like we have a better understanding of everybody's roll. Okay, here come my little loud one. I'm sorry, I'm a mute.
Oh, well, I'm glad that you were able to come. And I will just say that anybody else that's listening online, the Zoom link that you can join is in the syllabus. And so if you want to come our next week, just for, you can do that. So encourage people to do that. Jeff, how about you? How are you feeling?
Missing my group members in here.
I know Dr. Rice, I think he had student appointments tonight. So.
Probably. Yeah, I think things are going well. Like I said, I think we're balancing that flexibility with like being able to also making sure we're timely with everything. So this Friday, or yeah, tomorrow when we meet, um, I think things are going to work out well in those conversations we have. I think tonight in the class was a lot very clear, especially with like the executive summary. It's more of just, and how that looks, and things like that. So yeah, I think it was very helpful.
Okay. What about you, Tony?
I mean, I'm feeling really good about it. I think for the literature synthesis, it'll be good to actually make sure we're all talking through our ideas and whether something's accepted or rejected by the group and why it was. And then we can also formulate what thinking led behind certain recommendations so that we're actually getting into the oh, well, that's a great suggestion. We should just implement it. Well, why? What? Let's actually get into the details there. So that cleared it up for me, so that when we're talking, I can make sure that I'm kind of getting at some of the details and also looking at their sources. I mean, the group dynamics and everything has been great so far. We're all very busy, but we're making it work. So I appreciate Latara and Kat. Kat really hitting on some of these technical things taken. I mean, we're really embodying that shared leadership process that we're a group process that we've talked about in like team development. So it's been good and I've been enjoying it.
Oh, okay. Well, we're going to spend the last half hour. Good. I'm glad that, it seems like we're all on the same page here. We're going to spend the last half hour talking about peer coaching. So Latara, normally when you've had class with me, it's a 3-hour class. We take a break in between, but we just push through for 2 hours here, typically for this class. So if you need to take a break, you can, and just come back if you need to. So let's talk about peer coaching. So, for the people who are, the discussion post this week, for all of you all, I'm going to show you what you're going to be thinking about, and this will help you know kind of how you need to be thinking about this. So we're finished with the work plan stuff now, and you all have done a really good job with those. I haven't looked at the discussion, your feedback to each other yet, but I have given feedback to your discussion, your work-based plan, at least that you turned in on Sunday. So this time you're going to be thinking about a time in which you gave or received peer coaching. Now, I'm going to define this really broadly, okay? It might not have actually been called peer coaching, probably wasn't. But I want you to think about a time when anyone gave you advice on how to deal with a conflict situation. So I'll throw out an example. So I think I may have mentioned early on in the semester about the brain chemistry and amygdala hijacks and emotional things, and about the time that I was at Big Orange with my daughter, and ended up just was getting ready to lose it in terms of things I said, and ended up walking home. And they ate, and then they brought my food home. Well, on the way home, I called my sister. Now, she was not a peer coach. She wasn't trained to do this, but she talked me off the cliff. So we think about the host that Yuri talks about, the third side partner. That is all part of peer coaching. Now, the 4 articles that I gave you a couple of different versions of summaries of, for this week, talked about peer coaching as kind of almost mediation, as being transformative, and gave several kinds of things. But in this kind of situation, I'm really defining coaching very broadly. Okay, you could, if you think I've never ever had anybody give me advice, you could even refer back to the AI as a third side experience that you had, in which it was coaching you. Okay, so I'm really broadening this where you can, I'm hoping everybody will have something, right? So here it's a video, you know, where you go back and forth between, sometimes the discussions are videos and sometimes they're writing. And I'm gonna be honest, the reason why I did that this semester is because in my faculty meeting, Latara, faculty members talked about maybe we need to have them do more videos, less writing, because if they do more videos, although they could still get the script written for them by AI, I'm not wanting you to do that, but although they could, at least they're articulating it out loud and maybe they'll catch some of it. This is especially true of the undergraduate level that we were trying. So that's, and also I think it's just more interesting than always having to read something. So what type of conflict situation was it? What role? Now, oh, this is another thing. It could be a time in which you gave advice. You were the third side. You were the host. Okay. So what type of conflict situation was it? What role did you play? In what form did it take place? Was it in person? Was it over the phone? Was it, you know, over text? What was it? What was the effect of the coaching on you personally? And this could be whether you are the coach or the coachee. And then how could the coaching experience have been improved in terms of the communication that happened within it? Okay. So we're going to try out a coaching scenario. This time, this is an activity, coaching, peer coaching simulation. I need a coachee, someone that tells the context of a conflict they need coaching on. I need a coach, and I need the rest of you to be observers. So I know, Jeff, you role played before, so maybe it would be better. And was it Doc Rice that you role played with before, right? So he's not here. So maybe it would be better for Kat, Latara, or Tony to do this and you be an observer this time. Okay. So who would like to be coached? They want to tell a little bit about a conflict that and you remember this is videotaped, recorded. So you got to be willing to tell about something that you're okay with. You could even make up something if you want. Who would like to be between the three of you, Tony, Latara, and Kat, want to be the coachee? Who wants to be the coach?
Okay, so I totally was a role play on the last time, but
Oh,
if
you were the
neither
role,
Kat-
although Jeff
no, Jeff,
No,
me,
it
Jeff,
was-
and Doc. Yeah.
Okay, so Latara and Kat have got to do this then. All right, we're going to do this. I'm going to share the link to this guide in the chat. So that this is the handout from today, but I'm going to share it so you guys can open it up. All right, so Latara or Kat, who wants to be the coach? Let's start with that. Who wants to be the coach?
Latara, do you want to be the coach since you kind of coach people already?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I could be the coach.
All right, so Latara, I'm already going to spotlight you for everybody. And then Kat, I'm going to spotlight you too. Do you already have in your mind, Kat, a situation?
What do we need the situation to be? Like, I don't know how to do something, or someone gotten on my nerves, or
It could be anything that has caused conflict for you or that is
Oh.
causing conflict. Now, Latara, you might, at this point, you can look at my notes for you, or you can just play it by ear based on your own experience. So I do have some things that you can do as a coach, like begin with empathy and curiosity, asking permission to help, asking reflective questions. There's additional questions you can ask on page 5 of this handout, and avoid giving advice in terms of telling them the next step they've got to do, because that doesn't go over extremely well. Well, Kat, you should do this. You should do this. Now you can coach them in process in terms of, have you thought about, or how has that worked for you? But we're not talking about living their life and giving them advice. Well, you should just break up with that person. That's not the kind of thing that we would want a coach to be doing at this point, because you get in trouble sometimes for giving that kind of advice. So good. Are you guys good?
yeah. Actually, I'll use the conflict that I kind of responded to Tony's post last night. So I'll even use the person's real name. By the way,
And
Jeff,
Tony-
this isn't you. This is
Second,
another Jeff. No one's gonna know him.
Okay, hang on a second, Kat. Tony and Jeff, I need for you to be the observers, note down anything that they do that relates to the things that we've talked about, especially be focusing on Latara's behavior. But even Kat could make this difficult for Latara. I'm not asking you to do that, but yeah. Okay, so Kat, you
You know what?
started.
I'll use the person's last name. We'll call him John. Okay.
Okay,
So, John, asked me a question, and I went in his office, and he was explaining it and explained it the wrong way. And there were two other people in the office, and I just pat him on the back and I said, "No, silly, it's not that way. Look, let me walk you through it." And then, that was apparently the conflict, but I just found out about it because I walked into the boss's office and she told me John was in there because he had done something wrong at work. So he was talking to her. And then all of a sudden he goes, "Well, I'm about to file a complaint against Kat because she touched me on the back of the shoulder. And yeah, that's uncalled for." And that made me embarrassed and everything else. So, and then she said, "Well, when," she told me that she asked him, "Well, when did this happen?" And he said 4 or 5 months ago. And then she had talked to him and said, "Well, you know, she's not that type of person. She actually took 3 hours, 2 to 3 hours off her own time to go home and get you a pair of her old prescription glasses because you didn't have any to drive to an appointment. So I don't think she's that type of person." And I just found out about that from her. And now I don't trust this guy. Like, he came to my office the other day and I was just like, "Nope, can't help you. You should go to this website right here. It can help you use that HR program." And I won't talk to him unless there's somebody in my office with me or it's by email or some recorded thing. I don't trust him.
Well, first and foremost, I think that the kind of like boundaries that you set in place for him sounds very logical. I mean, the incident, obviously, he read it wrong, misunderstood your gestures of just trying to clarify or help. So it's unfortunate, but I do feel like you handled yourself well in a sense of just trying to create boundaries when encountering this person. Um, I would want to ask you, like, how do you feel moving forward when you, like, say, for instance, dealing with another coworker? How would your experience be with them just moving forward? Like, does this make you want to navigate differently?
Well, any other coworker, it doesn't make me want to navigate differently because I trust him. But this guy, oh, I definitely want to navigate. And in the past, he's talked smack about people behind their backs and tried to get them in trouble. And I mean, I just don't trust him. This guy is a liar. Honestly, I want to tell you, as soon as I walked out of the boss's office, I walked back to my office and shut the door and turned some music on and had to calm down because I wanted to toss this guy in the trash can.
I'm so sorry. I had to giggle because that was that was
I wanted to just, honestly, you can't say that about people, I know, but when you go out of your way and you help somebody and they just kind of smack you, like, you just, ooh, my nerves.
Yeah, I know that feels like a slap in the face. Well, thank goodness you were not able to toss him in the garbage like a piece of trash. I'm glad that you managed to find an alternative, um, I would say safe way to kind of manage your emotions in that moment. You didn't let it overtake you, so I commend you on that. I just think that in life you deal with difficult people, and sometimes I kind of look at situations like this as like test to kind of just kind of test how you would react, and you wouldn't know how you would react if you didn't encounter this experience with him. So hopefully you feel like you can take something from this situation and learn. But I do think that you handled yourself well because most people will just kind of crack under pressure and let their emotions get the best of them. So,
Yes, it was really, really stressful, but I knew I had a lot going on at work and I knew that unfortunately there's like certain things into play and I felt like he was just making that because up not making it up, but he felt that way. But instead of coming to address me, he kind of put it in the back to hold on to. So if I reacted to it, I kind of felt like he was like, well, now I can get her in trouble and turn her in and she'll get fired and I'll take her job. Like, I can't express how much I wanted to just backhand him like an older sister, but yeah, I agree. But it has made me feel more stressed out about how I deal with other people that exhibit how I feel trigger me and exhibit some sort of the same stuff as him. Typically when I run into those people, they can tell on my face that I'm just like,
Oh, so
Um,
you're one of those people like it's written all over your face, how you feel.
oh
It's hard
yes.
to hide it.
Oh, yes. Yes. But I did pretend when that person kept coming to my office and asking me, "Oh, do I have a question for this?" And I would say, "Nope, can't help you. Go down there." No. Like I wasn't nice about it. So it did show. But I even told my supervisor straight. I told her, I said, "No, ma'am. I've already learned his thing. He pretends not to ask questions. We've trained him so many times." I said, "He tries to get us to do the work for him. I'm not helping him anymore." I said, "I will give him the website to go to and somebody else to ask, but there's somebody down the hallway that knows this stuff, so he can go ask because I don't trust him." He's got some behavior that makes him look like an abuser and a predator. No, thank you.
Yeesh. Well, again, like I stated, I just feel like ultimately in life you do deal with difficult people, and especially on your jobs. I feel like the people that you work with, you see so much, and it's important that you have like a peaceful work environment. So just trying to make sure you are always feeling like you do have a safe space. You feel, like you don't have to always have a tensed environment because this person is coming around. So ultimately, just placing those boundaries and keeping that in the forefront of your mind so that you don't just be overworking yourself with giving this person all that energy, negative energy. Um, so redirecting him to someone else is the greatest thing you could ever do, because clearly this person and this individual has only caused you stress, and he definitely brings out, I feel like the negative side of, I know that's not the way you want to feel while you're working amongst your coworkers. So
No, and I did have a
directing
question.
him is good.
I did have a question. How, if I'm supposed to work with that person, like on a project or something, how would I still remain professional but still have some set boundaries? Like if we're supposed to be in the same shared space.
I really think like you had explained when he came to you, you know you didn't want to even have any interactions with him, and you just kind of told him, "Look, I can give you the website and I can point you to someone else who could help you." I just think, you clearly know what your like level of tolerance is when it comes to difficult people. And if you feel like just redirecting him to someone else, or I mean, if it's that, like intense where you cannot be around this person, then clearly having a conversation like with a superior and letting them know that you don't feel comfortable, you feel uncomfortable, possibly having someone to come in and mediate the situation so that you could get to a place, because clearly you work with them, and you will encounter them more than not, so possibly getting a mediator to come in, but ultimately just expressing to whoever you guys is superior are how you feel if you don't feel comfortable working with that person. But yeah, those would be some of my suggestions, because I think it's important to always feel comfortable and safe amongst all of your peers, all of your coworkers, superiors, so forth. So just making sure you can, express that to someone who can, oversee and make sure that the work environment is conducive for everybody.
All right,
Okay, that sounds good.
I'm gonna break in here. I think that they've done a good job, so I'm gonna quit spotlighting you all, and then,
Oh yeah,
Yes.
that was a real person, by the way, everybody. The same person I keep talking about. That was a real person that's done it.
yeah, it sounds intense. Really, it does. So Jeff, what do you think? What'd you see in terms of third side behaviors,
Yeah.
your coaching
So
behaviors?
Excuse me laughing. I could not. Kat is just hilarious in how she was explaining. I could tell this was a real person because she was so passionate. So
Yeah, yeah.
oh no, I definitely get it. Tony and I, it was so hard for us to not laugh. I mean, I think we just busted out a couple of times, like just our role play last time. He just looked at me, stared me in the eyes, said, "Euler sucks."
Yeah, it was the purple versus maroon last time, if you
Yeah,
remember
yeah.
Latara. Yeah. What'd you notice,
But
Jeff?
yes, so I did so in the beginning, Latara tried to bring Kat out into that balcony, kind of seeing different perspectives there, which I thought was really cool, and then brought up, you know, the alternative option that Kat did choose, right? So understanding that there were multiple options of what could have been the best, and then she chose, one of those different options out there. Um, the only thing that I would really suggest is kind of more of like, and I've been saying, doing this a lot more in the chats and bringing that up, but like reiterating questions with some of the key words. So there's that one point where Kat was using the metaphors and kind of talking about how, metaphor of the person being like looking like an abuser or predator, and then I would think to respond, like abuser with a question mark to kind of get them to open up more about what they think that, as that definition, they're kind of explaining more in depth about that metaphor of how they see things. That, and then maybe asking, like what would forgiveness look like to you, for that perspective, to get that person to start thinking, well, if they do want to reconcile or make amends or want my forgiveness, what would I envision that to look like, to kind of get them to already start imagining a better outcome. But those are the only two that I would say. It's quiet.
that was really good too, Jeff. I
No,
think that
yeah.
um, when she originally said those words, abuser, I think because I was so caught up in her being so passionate, I just took it as just unfortunately her just kind of being descriptive and how she was describing her experience. So it didn't really strike me like that. So thank you, Jeff, for even bringing that up because I didn't even look at it like that.
Yeah, I think it's really easy. Kind of, I
Oh,
mean,
I think
definitely.
Dr. April might be having some issues with
Oh,
her
okay. With her
audio.
mind.
Yeah.
Like that's what I was waiting for, was April to jump in and direction us from this point.
Yeah, I was directing you. I was saying, Tony, it's your turn. But yes, Jeff, what I liked about Jeff actually was just coaching you. Okay. So, he was basically saying, here are the things that you did well, and here's something that you might consider. Okay. So he's actually also doing kind of this meta coaching about this. So sorry about that. I did think I was moving my mouth and you could hear me, but I had my mic off. All right, Tony.
So like the thing I enjoyed the most was, Latara, you did reinforce Kat's boundaries, because when you have issues like that, the individual that has now been accused, which would be Kat in this, that she did something inappropriate, deserves to have her safe space and her boundaries. And this individual has obviously created a place where she can't have that. and she shouldn't have to shrink and reserve within herself. And all I would recommend is in reinforcing those boundaries is kind of walking through the process of you don't feel safe. So what you should do, and like you said, you did say you need to bring in a supervisor, bring in a mediator, but really reinforcing her that, and you did, but making sure that she's getting it in there that your creation of boundaries is okay and fine and it is perfectly acceptable. I mean, I know I put in the chat, like when I was seeing Kat, I just couldn't help but think, I would just be like the Joker and just be like, why so serious? But it's really a serious moment. And she wanted to throw this, and she probably could. This guy probably played like a $150 and probably could have chunked him in the garbage can and, just smack down on his life. And she didn't. She showed great restraint. So, reinforcing those emotions that she did not exist or reinforcing the restraint that she gave to this individual because it's very important that she feel validated.
TLC does not mean loving care. It means tables, ladders, and chairs. Okay, there we go. It could be that too. Kat, I think you did feel supported. And that would be, I think that you did. My only suggestion for the coaching role, as I was thinking about it, is I wish, we got to that, and maybe if I hadn't cut it off, we would have gotten more about. But Kat, you asked the question near the end about what do I do when I'm in this situation, and so I'm thinking about all the things Latara suggested were good, right? Setting the clear boundaries, going back to some things that you said that you would actually that you had done, reporting it to a supervisor. You need a safe space. And, for people who really are abusive, really are, whatever it is. But I'm like, is there anything else? If William Ury was here, is there anything else that he might recommend? And so when I was thinking about that in terms of, and you talked to Latara about mediating, bringing a mediator in. So if William Ury was mediating this conflict, is there anything else that could be going on for this guy? Right? Now, I understand that his behavior, I don't even want to give him a second chance. The table, ladders, and chairs was real. Okay. But is there anything else, if I was his manager or the HR person, what else would I be wanting to know about what's going on for him? Is there any other possible explanation? And I'm not asking you to think about that today as much as, although Kat, you might have an idea.
Oh, I've already tried. I tried actually, Dr. Cece. So I tried to later on when I felt comfortable and I became the supervisor. I actually tried to reconcile, still get my healthy boundaries and see what type of place he was coming from, because he got himself deeper into a ditch even more with everybody in the entire workplace with the same behaviors. So we tried, and I tried that because he explained a little bit of his background and what made him think. And then I started to give him empathy, and I was like, okay, I can see where you're coming from. But I stopped it at that because then the behavior just continued.
Yeah, and you also have to be careful because he's already accused you of doing something that would be stepping over the line. So if you are becoming too empathic, he might be able to say or think he could say, she's coming on to me, right? Because it's difficult. You're in a catch-22 when you try to do that. And that's where Latara's idea of bringing the mediator in that could potentially do that might work. But these, and I will just say, conflict situations are like this, right? They aren't all solvable in the way that we would like for them to be solvable. And sometimes the best thing is for the person to not be at the workplace that is causing the problem, and to be let go. And we probably have all kind of seen that. So one of the things that I would like for you to think about is, as you saw this kind of coaching model, and this is also for the folks who are watching online, and especially for the neighbor to neighbor group. So Jeff, I know you're kind of alone here with your group here. But is there any place at all for a peer coaching system for Providence Park? So if a person was having a situation, imagine the cat was living at Providence Park as a neighbor, and there was someone that actually had a similar and was, who might Cat talk to? This might not be, I need to have a mediated conversation between this person. I might just need help on knowing how to protect myself and how to draw boundaries. And so there might be a place for that kind of peer coaching to either help mediate, right? Be the mediator, or actually give advice to how can you best live in the same neighborhood with this person. And so it's something that I've been thinking about as I had that meeting with Mandy and Aaron on Monday, and when they were not finding a partner that's like the restorative justice partner, I'm like, why couldn't the Department of Applied Communication, for example, or the conflict management students actually create a, not you guys, but for this class, but create a training program that's a peer coaching training program, and actually train, if they identify people that could potentially have that kind of psychological good fit for that, actually train people in their area to be peer coaching. Because you remember the article, there was an article a week or two ago that talked about rehearsal and peer, maybe it was this week, talked about peer coaching, and actually how they compared people who had the book knowledge and training against the people who actually had a peer coach. And the people who had the longer lasting conflict management behaviors were the people with the peer coach, not the people who actually just had the book knowledge. So anyway, something for you to be thinking about. Tony.
Well, to that, it's very person specific when you're talking about an individual like that, because they're starting out small, so they can try to institute a peer culture among the neighbors that they bring in and kind of tailor themselves to try to identify individuals who seem to have that openness, kind of like the wizards that I was talking about in one of my previous assignments, is somebody that can come in and can facilitate communication, whether it comes from inside the community or not. But they're almost needing someone who can bridge the friend and therapist gap, and who has shared trauma in their background, because trauma in its base raw form is shared among all. And we all feel it. We all feel the anxiety. We all feel the frustration. We all feel the anger. We all feel everything that comes with trauma. So we're able to better navigate. But then there are specific traumas like chronic homelessness. There, like I've felt a lot of trauma in my life, but I don't know if I could feel that in the same empathic way that I feel other things, because I've never experienced that. So they're going to need a person, if they found them early, somebody who can facilitate that conversation and bring the two residents in and start that kind of peer development process, because they're at the point where if they start these things early, they can grow, but they have to walk it carefully, because you don't want to make the individuals feel obligated to involve themselves. And it's difficult, but I would believe looking at your person is almost more important than looking at their qualifications.
Interesting.
They need the qualifications, but you need that human aspect, someone who knows how to be a real person with you, who knows when you don't need somebody to give you a solution. I just need you to hear me and let me feel heard. And having someone of high emotional intelligence who can navigate those moments would be extremely beneficial.
I mean, I thought about even having it be the missional.
Yes.
And we haven't talked a lot about the role of the missional, but having them missional, it's not exactly a peer, but they do live on site, right? But when I mentioned that to Mandy and Aaron, Mandy in particular said, we really just want the missional to be a community support, like to be there and make the community seem like it's normal, not have to have an extra role of taking on that kind of peer coach. But I still think it's possible that they could do that. I don't know enough about First Community Village, what the missionals do. But I keep thinking about Yuri's Third Side, even the restorative circle video that you all watched like a week ago, and how, what would it take for somebody to play that role? I mean,
Well, you could consider, what does it anthropologists do? They go to live in and embed within the community. So if you take that kind of same construct and put it to interns or people who are above in the dissertation or the PhD student, people who are applying themselves to that area and
yeah, you
who
could have
will,
a social worker embedded, and they
yes,
will,
as a missional,
as a
basically,
missional,
in a
yeah.
housing, and then they live there, and then they live among them, and it like that social, like that just kind of clicked to my head to say, if you were, they're not like in a research term a Confederate, but they are an individual who lives with them and who is always available. And it could be, cycled out. It can be a house that, 6 months or 8 months of an internship or something where the individual is proving themselves to be someone who can facilitate that communication. And maybe it's a paid role, maybe it's not, but somebody who's there, who's not exactly a mission, because community first, they wanted to stay away from asking their missionals to do too much.
Mhm.
They did not want to put responsibility on them because they are dealing with their own issues. But if you bring in somebody from the outside, but who is at that property all the time, who
Mhm.
is there for a purpose and a reason, 8 months, 10 months, or even 6, and
That's
you
an
could even do
interesting thought.
2, living
Yeah.
within one environment. It could be a great learning experience for someone.
Yeah. So that would be something that I would encourage you all, just because it's not present in Community First doesn't mean it can't be a solution that you all present as a possibility. You're just throwing out possible things that potentially could happen. I think I was thinking originally of the missionals as being like resident assistants in a dorm setting, and they oftentimes have to be peer coaches or mediators in conflict situations. And so that's what I was originally thinking about the missionals being. But because missionals often have their own families and other things, I understand that they don't want to put too much on them. Anyway, I would like for you all to think about in your own areas. I don't know that it works as well in the property management side of the house, but think in your own areas of, is there anything from this peer coaching kind of environment as you're writing your own, description of how you've either been a coach or you've, been coached, anything at all that might could be brought in to the Providence Park arena. So that's what I'd like for you to think of. All right, it is 8:05, so we are over our 2-hour time limit, and we still haven't seen Latara's little one.
Oh, he's been around. He just hadn't made his screen debut, but he's definitely been
Well,
around.
are we going to get to see him for his screen debut?
Oh,
If the rest of you have furry animals or other or children, you can bring them too to show us. I know, Tony, you do.
Yeah, we have plenty.
Look at this one.
can you say
Oh my
hi?
goodness. Hey, baby. Hey, look. Hi.
Hi,
I've
can
met
you
you
wave?
before.
Yes, can you wave hi?
Remind everybody what his name is.
His name is King, everyone.
Hi,
And he
King.
is so busy right now. He like, I want to get down and go run back to my room.
You got some fancy hair there going, King.
Oh, yes, he do, but we are going to cut that hair.
Okay, okay. Well, I'm sorry
Okay.
to make you have to think about you're trying to draw your boundaries here. So
Oh,
anyway,
no, it's
all
okay.
right. Any last questions here? All right, if not, let me know if you have any as you get going on the things that you're working on. So what's due this weekend? Everybody's got the discussion post about your own experience with coaching. And then, define very broadly and widely. Then you've got your group resource guide draft that one of your group members will submit either by email or by actually going into the Blackboard, depending on if that link works or that button. And then for anybody that's not here today, you'll be doing a journal entry. And the journal entry actually is asking people to be thinking about how could peer coaching be used at Providence Park. So All right, you all. Take care. Have a good night.